In Lake Elmo, the kids are the stars on the 4th of July. This tradition is advertised as being 28 years in the making, but those who've been here since the beginning say it's even older than that. Preparing for a parade.
It's a tradition. It's become a tradition.
On July 4th.
I just love it.
Scenes like this play out in towns across America.
Miracle tape.
This is a whole day event for us.
Like many towns, Lake Elmo puts its own spin on it.
I think communities are known for their own little niche.
I love that everybody's here.
Candy.
When the parade rolls down Lake Elmo Avenue, the only reason there aren't more kids on the curb to catch candy is that they're also the ones throwing it.
My kids were in it all their life, and now my grandkids are in it. And it's just a little hometown get-together, really. It's wonderful.
Eileen Bergman was one of the original organizers in the 1970s of the Lake Elmo Kids Parade.
We just had kids. We brought the kids over with their bicycles, and they drove one block. And when we first started, there were maybe only 12 kids that did it.
Now her granddaughter is one of the hundreds doing it, proudly displaying the biggest American flag in the parade.
Hopefully we're teaching our children.
Teaching them patriotism, and along the way, tradition and hometown pride.
I mean, we could go to lots of parades, but there's something about going to this one because it's hometown, because you know a lot of the people and the little kids, and you know, that's a special thing for them.
Even though this parade has really grown over the years, people say one of the best parts about it is you can still show up 10 minutes ahead of time and still jump into the parade. In Lake Elmo, Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
As we told you, the problem goes beyond having no power. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with that part of the story. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Rena. The biggest problems here in Rogers came in the form of traffic problems today, as 3 major roads in the area were closed for much of the day. The reason? Right behind me here. High tension power poles, a mangled mess as that high voltage power line tumbled to the ground, covering roads across a 15-mile path. Now, there were other places where damage affected the area, plenty of downed trees and limbs across the area. It was a scary evening for campers at a KOA between Maple Grove and Rogers, as they had to sit inside their RVs and listen to the branches falling onto them. One woman driving home during the storm actually had power lines fall onto her vehicle. She stepped on the gas and made it through safely. Her husband's truck, though, remained tangled in the high voltage lines.
I've even told the neighbors and friends today it's definitely the scariest thing ever that we've gone through.
Because they're high tension, is once the first poles went, it was a domino effect, and the other 15 miles of line followed with it.
And you can see traffic now is flowing on County Road 116. It's also flowing on County Road 101. There were fears that it would last several days, but Xcel, I'm told, made the choice to cut the power line here rather than the more lengthy process of building a bridge to carry the line over the road. And so while some folks are still without power, traffic is moving again. Rena?
All right, Lou Ragoose, live for 11's Lou Ragoose, spoke with several people who got caught out in that storm.
Those roads were closed for much of today because of this. High tension power poles, a mangled mess after that high voltage power line came tumbling to the ground, covering roads over a 15-mile stretch. A lonely truck entangled in high voltage power lines is what remains from a very close call for Betsy Brevik's family.
Well, the 3 of us are definitely praying out loud. There's no doubt about that.
She and her 2 sons were driving home during Tuesday's late afternoon storm, her husband following in the truck, when high tension power poles across Rogers began to break.
Power lines hit my windshield, hit the roof of my truck, so I drove super fast, about 80 as soon as I saw him coming down, and we were able to get away.
Then, Betsy and her neighbors, generators powering their homes, were essentially trapped.
Our neighbor came and told us that we had no access to get out.
The only way out, a grass path through a field.
Make it work.
A farmer raising deer lost his herd when he lost his fence. At a nearby KOA campground, when the wind picked up.
And all of a sudden it just came up and there was nothing you could do about anything.
The storm blew tree limbs onto RVs as the campers hunkered down inside.
It was really shaking that camper. I thought maybe we were going to tip over.
As the cleanup started there, the biggest problems in the area were the impassable roads.
There's 15 miles of north-south roadways on the south end of our community that are completely blocked.
Those who face the closest calls already need a break.
We'll probably head out to the hotel here soon.
And traffic is once again flowing here on County Road 116, also flowing on County Road 101. They had expected that this could last several days, but instead, Xcel Energy made the choice to cut the power line, I'm told, rather than the more lengthy process of bridging it over the road. In Rogers, Lou Raguse, KARE 11 News.
At the police headquarters, hundreds gathered there to protest the shooting death of Philando Castile. Our Lou Raguse is on the ground with demonstrators. Lou, what's the latest?
Hi, Zach. Yeah, the protest just wrapping up right now. The demonstrators just finished a march from here outside the St. Anthony Village Police Station, several blocks down Silver Lake Road. They turned around, officers blocked traffic for them as they went and came back here where they started. There were more than 200 people here, maybe closer to 300, and what they're demanding is what they call justice for the shooting death of Philando Castile. And justice, as they see it, would be the officer who shot him charged. Now, earlier this afternoon, there were several speakers that took the microphone. There were people who've had family members killed at the hands of police that spoke. There were others talking about how things just haven't seemed to get better even after the other police-involved shootings that we've had over the last couple of years. And also the NAACP president, Nikema Levy-Pounds, took the microphone, and she talked about how now that there's a movement here in the Twin Cities, they hope to see action very soon. There were, like I said, close to 300 people here today. It was a completely peaceful protest, and several of the people here were also out very late last night.
But even just to keep the issue in the forefront of the community or put pressure on the system, we have to protest. It's kind of odd when you think about it. We literally, if we don't protest, there's no chance at all. Protesting increases our chances, which are still slim.
Okay, and a lot of the speakers today were local community activists and local leaders. There was a little bit of controversy involving this protest because at first it was set up by a group of out-of-town activists, and the local folks just didn't know what the intention of that group was and what kind of people they would bring in. So at first they were asking people not to come to this protest, but they later contacted that group and took the reins from them so that it was put on here all by local activists, and they were able to get the message out that they wanted to get out. Now, coming up later tonight on KARE 11 News at 10, we'll show you exactly some of the things that were said, some of the emotions that were flowing here today during the protests. Zach, back to you.
Lou Raguse, thank you very much for that report. We're going to now 11's Lou Raguse. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Zach. Well, things are calm out here, and I would say quiet outside the governor's mansion, except for these folks are now playing loud music. There's even a little dancing going on in the street. After a very long night and everything that happened on I-94 on Saturday night, today was a very peaceful day of protesting.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! Phil!
Justice for Phil, Philando Castile, is what demonstrators want.
We're marching to end police brutality.
To them, that would mean the police officer who shot him, Geronimo Yanez, charged.
No justice, no peace.
Many believe getting out in the streets and being heard is the only shot they've got.
We have to protest. It's kind of odd when you think about it. We literally, if we don't protest, there's no chance at all. Protesting increases our chances, which are still slim.
Sunday afternoon's demonstration outside the St. Anthony Police Station and the short march that followed were peaceful. But Nikema Levy-Pounds, Minneapolis NAACP president, doesn't want all demonstrators grouped together when protests turn violent, like on I-94 Saturday night.
Officers know how to hone in on agitators. No one's saying protect agitators. They're saying don't treat all protesters as though they are engaging in violence.
It's been so long.
Sunday's rally had a lot of strong emotion on the topic of race,
Young and black and free.
including the race of Yanez, the St. Anthony cop who fired several shots at Castile, a black man.
It doesn't matter that he was Latino. He was acting on behalf of a white supremacist system that has been allowed to perpetuate violence against poor people of color. Enough is enough.
These folks are hoping this police shooting has a different outcome in the courts than Minnesota's other cases have in the past, partly thanks to the Facebook video shot in the moments after Castile was shot.
The fact that you could see it live and in color is that now people can't deny our reality.
They hope those in authority will feel the same. At the protests outside St. Anthony today, there was 200 to 300 people. Here outside the governor's mansion, you can see perhaps some of that dancing going on, but you might also see tents set up, large amounts of water and food, so it appears that the protesters, some of them at least, aren't leaving anytime soon. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it's going to be a late night indeed. Thank you very much, Lou.
Reports about Philando Castile matching the description of a robbery suspect. But as KARE 11's Lou Ragoose reports, you can't believe everything you read. He's here to explain. Lou?
Julie, we took notice of one blog post in particular because the number of times it's been shared on social media and because it uses information from one of our reports to make a point. But it inaccurately represents our reporting in some ways, so we decided to fact check it. The problem with this blog post from the website The Conservative Treehouse begins with the title. It says, "Confirmed, Philando Castile was an armed robbery suspect." In fact, no law enforcement agency at any time has said that Castile was a robbery suspect. The blog apparently draws that conclusion from this KARE 11 report.
The two occupants just look like people that were involved in a robbery. The driver looks more like one of our suspects, just because of the wide set nose.
There was an armed robbery on July 2nd at the Super USA on Larpenteur Avenue, less than 2 miles from where Castile was shot, and St. Anthony Police sent a crime alert with 2 black men pictured as suspects. In an interview with the Star Tribune, Officer Geronimo Llana's attorney, Tom Kelly, says Castile looked like a suspect, but the only information in the police dispatch audio linking Castile to the robbery suspect is what the officer observed as, quote, the wide-set nose. The blog post also says Castile did not have a permit to carry a gun, citing this tweet from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. But KARE 11 confirmed through sources the day after the shooting that Castile had a permit to carry issued by Hennepin County. And that police dispatch audio was provided to KARE 11 by a viewer who monitors scanner traffic. So far, authorities haven't released it or commented on whether it's authentic. An attorney helping some members of the Castile family tells me that if the officer truly thought he was pulling over an armed robber, he believes that officer would have made a felony stop, which involves removing passengers at gunpoint before approaching the car. Julie?
I think that's so helpful that we're really taking some of these things apart little by little, because things really catch fire on social media so quickly, and it's hard to know what's fact and what isn't. So.
Yeah, and this is one of those articles that it seems like just about everyone out there has read.
Right, all right. Thanks so much, Lou. In Malacca. Now that is north of the Twin Cities, and it's where we find KARE 11's Lou Ragoose. Lou?
Yeah, Julie, the National Weather Service says they measured over 4 inches of rain here in Malacca, but I have several people who have their own rain gauges who measured up to 10 inches here as well. We're live right next to the Rum River, which overflowed its banks overnight, running over roads just like this one. And as we move this way, if you look right over here, you can see over the side of the road just how fast this water is moving as it runs across the road. Now, several roads were affected. There were a few houses affected as well. First, take a look at this cabin with the water halfway up the windows. We also caught up with a group of family, friends, and neighbors helping out a man sandbag his workshop where he keeps classic cars. His house was already surrounded by water. The city's schools were surrounded with playgrounds flooded, and at least one car stalled in the middle of the street. But folks here sure have a good attitude about everything.
Well, at 3:30 I woke up and went down the stairs to what I thought was rushing water, and sure enough it was.
But everybody comes together wherever they need to be, and we get it done, you know.
And I'm told that the Rum River crested this morning. The water is falling. I can tell you it's fallen dramatically just since we arrived this morning, but there's still one thing police are very worried about, and that's people walking out into the water. Many people have been tempted so far since we've been here. And way beyond me where there's a bridge there, there's a few people that walked all the way across here. Police are urging people not to do that because it's not safe when the water is moving that fast. I'll have much more on this situation coming up at 6 o'clock. Julie?
All right, great info and pictures. Thank you so much, Lou. Now back to that tornado. Lou?
Julie, thankfully the worst of it is past these residents of Malacca. Just since we spoke at 5 o'clock, these waters have receded pretty dramatically. Look behind me, though, you can see the Rum River still flowing very quickly. This area received anywhere between 4 and 10 inches of rain overnight. Tourists are common in Malacca this time of year.
They get the bait shop before they go north to the lake.
But today, the locals played the role of sightseers.
That's the Rum River along us, and I've never seen it flood like this in all my days.
Crazy.
Oh, definitely, yeah, yep. Yeah, there's been lots of people driving around looking at it.
But Pat Hardy is thankful to those who stopped and helped.
Hopefully keep it to minimal damage in here.
With his house already surrounded by water, friends, family, and neighbors laid sandbags around his workshop.
This is where I do all my stuff. This is where all my prized possessions are. So
after helping him move those prized possessions to higher ground.
This morning we woke up early with phone calls.
After doing that, Brian Johnson tended to a lonely car stranded in the middle of a city street, the water to the top of its wheel wells.
Just kind of what you do in a small town.
And our school is flooding.
With no class in session, the water crept around Malacca's schools and filled Malacca's parks. Riverview has a whole new meaning on Central Avenue as Mother Nature shows her power to the people of Malacca, and they react with awe.
Nature's so strong, you can't do anything about that. You just roll with it and do the best you can.
And over on this side of the road, you can see a clear picture of how much the water has gone down. It is a real local attraction here to come and take a look at the floodwaters, but police want to remind people not to venture into the water too much because it's still flowing very quickly and you could very easily lose your footing. Julie?
All right, we see some people doing just that behind you, Lou. Thanks for your report.
Exactly.
Continuing our coverage tonight, a week after 2 Roseville officers were cleared of wrongdoing in a deadly shooting, KARE 11 has obtained body camera video of the incident. The video brings to light the type of issues police face when they're patrolling. Our Lou Ragoose has the story and a warning that you may find the video disturbing.
Roseville police were responding to 2 911 calls that a man inside an apartment was yelling, swearing, and breaking things.
John, so please open the door.
The man was John Berklin, who, according to his family, suffered from mental illness and substance abuse.
John, open the door.
No, I'm okay.
John?
No, I'm fine.
Open the door so we can take a look, and then we'll be on our way.
Berklin had 4 contacts with Roseville police the previous year that included odd behavior. After 18 minutes of asking Berklin to open the door, the officers busted through, later saying they wondered if Berklin was held inside against his will.
In my mind, I've been to that call.
Watching and listening to body camera footage of the encounter gives Patty Hecht-Cressley goosebumps.
It's a very, very complex situation.
After 13 years as an officer in South St. Paul, Patty now teaches crisis intervention team training to police to help them de-escalate situations with people who have mental illness. Situations like this, in which police play the role of mental health counselor. When Berklin refused to come out of a bedroom closet, the officers sent in a canine, and this is what happened next.
Show your hand. Under arrest. Let go of that knife. Let go. Let go. Let go now. Stop.
24 minutes after officers first knocked on Berklin's door, 2 other officers fired 4 shots, killing him. They say Berklin stabbed the canine, then was lunging toward them with a knife. The body camera video didn't capture any of it. Berklin's sister says they pounded and escalated the situation. John Berklin didn't deserve to die. Everything they did was wrong. But Patty says to keep in mind.
Dealing with people with mental health issues, especially somebody who's really, really ill and really, really symptomatic, it's very hard. There's a lot of therapists who struggle with it. Somebody with mental health degrees find it challenging.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Crisis intervention team training is a 40-hour class that is not mandated in Minnesota. A third of Roseville officers have received the full training, while the rest have received at least part. Ribbon cutting is this Friday, but today we got a behind-the-scenes look at the tour thousands will be taking this weekend. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with a look inside the brand new stadium. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Julie. Reporting out here live, the sun positioned differently than it was earlier today. I'm just really struck by how well they create the illusion that we are outdoors right now because of all the natural light that's let into US Bank Stadium. This is the culmination of a $1.1 billion project. I've been on 3 tours here over the last year and a half, and I can tell you the finishing touches really made a difference. The shadowy turf inside US Bank Stadium looks like an outdoor football field, thanks to the roof, more than half of which lets in light like glass. The seating section on one side is fully retractable so that even baseball can be played in US Bank Stadium.
We have the largest retractable seating section of any stadium, certainly in the country, maybe even in the world.
The stadium has 66,200 seats, but not all seats are created equal. Fans can lounge on couches if they have tickets to the Purple Club. Every club room at the stadium is different, ranging from a nightclub-like atmosphere in the FMP Club to putting fans nearly into the action in the Delta Club. There, fans can high-five players as they run from the locker room onto the field. There's a big emphasis on technology at US Bank Stadium. Besides the video boards, this one's 120 by 68 feet. There's Wi-Fi throughout the stadium, so fans can go onto the Vikings app and watch instant replay right here. The video boards aren't the biggest in the NFL, but stadium officials argue biggest doesn't mean best. Rather than hanging above the 50-yard line, these are in the line of sight behind each end zone.
When you're over there, that board seems massive, but when you compare it to the one on the west, I always point out that that's the little video board, if you will.
The concession stands are ready to go with $9 beers and $6 hot dogs. And when fans are seated on game day, stadium officials argue they will all have a good view of the action. So now the media has had a tour of the finished stadium. This weekend, fans have their chance for a free tour. There are still tickets available for that. But what about the players? Perk is here with more on that. Perk, you had a tour along with the rest of us today. What do you think of everything?
It's amazing, Lou. Absolutely. I've seen pictures. Doesn't do it justice to while you're actually in here. But 40 days, and that's it. 40 days. That's how long Noah waited. The Vikings can do it too until they're...
Well, the feud between the Minneapolis mayor and president of the police union heated up again tonight over a T-shirt. You may remember the mayor slammed the police union president last week, and now he's firing back, he says, in the name of charity. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose has that story all new tonight.
Bob Kroll says the mayor's colorful language last week is now raising money for charity, the charity arm of the Minneapolis Police Federation, by selling these shirts right here. This is a reference to a Facebook post last week by Mayor Betsy Hodges calling something Kroll said jackass remarks. She was referring to an interview Kroll gave to the Star Tribune regarding off-duty officers walking out of a Lynx game where they were working security, upset with players wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. Kroll called the Lynx a pathetic draw. Now the Police Federation is selling these shirts that say #Jackass. Kroll says they are raising a lot of money, and supporters and officers from other departments are buying them. The shirts are $15, and Kroll says anyone that wants to stop by the Federation can buy one. Back to you.
Thank you, Lou.
19 more arrests tonight in St. Paul as police try to clear Summit Avenue of protesters who are demanding justice in the police shooting of Philando Castile. It brings the total number of people arrested today out of the mansion to 46. And while protesters and police agree the group has the right to protest, it all comes down, police say, to public safety. Our Lou Ragoose is live outside the governor's mansion tonight with the latest. Lou?
Carla, the protesters are still here, even some that we watched being arrested at 7 o'clock tonight. There's kind of a stare down of sorts with police right now in the intersection of Summit over here a block away from the governor's mansion. According to the St. Paul mayor and police chief, protesters stopped cooperating on Sunday night when asked to clear the street, and then were given one last chance this morning. It was a wall of blue marching down Summit Avenue.
Do not move. Sit down.
Aiming to end the protest.
You are under arrest. Sit down.
In front of the governor's mansion.
Do not move.
In charge. I walked up with the phone with Facebook Live. And you guys know it.
Yeah. Let's bring him in here. With a bus waiting to load them, police arrested 19 more people on charges of public nuisance and unlawful assembly. That brought the day's total to at least 46.
Some folks became defiant. A few folks became, quite frankly, dangerous.
Mayor Chris Coleman and St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell spoke after the earlier arrests, which moved the protesters away from the mansion. Protesters have been on Summit Avenue since the police shooting death of Philando Castile. The mayor made it sound as if the 20-day protest might continue as long as protesters didn't break the law by blocking the street, sidewalk, or setting up tents.
We think we came to a very clear understanding that folks needed to stay out of the street.
But then, with this attempt to end it, more arrests and protesters poured out more frustration.
Come on now. Pigs, and you're laughing because you're killing pigs.
Frustration at officers, frustration at reporters.
So if you get it near me one more time, I'm going to smash it up.
Frustration with anyone questioning why they're there.
This is not lawful. What is happening here is not lawful. That is not what this country stands for.
A day ending with nearly 50 people locked up. And those remaining claiming they aren't going anywhere. And the protesters were cleared out to reopen Summit Avenue to traffic. Traffic is not open right now. There's still a line of officers from St. Paul Police and the Minnesota State Patrol blocking Summit Avenue. And again, close to 100 protesters facing them off right now. Carla?
Lou Ragoose live in St. Paul. Thank you, Lou. Tonight, a heated confrontation between Pokemon Go players and veterans in Winona. Now, city leaders in Winona are calling for a ban of the game at the Veterans Memorial Park, where this all happened. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is here with the story, and a controversial one at that.
Yeah, and this has turned into a debate about what can be done in a public park and who's allowed to be there. An issue of rights versus respect. And a viral video shot Thursday night is bringing it all to a head. It was with anger and profanity that a well-known local veteran confronted a group of Pokemon Go players who've been setting up tents at Winona's Veterans Memorial Park.
These are like gravestones right there. It's like a gravestone.
No, it's not.
What do you mean, no, it's not?
It's not.
Camera.
And it was with sarcasm and acrimony
Crazy old man.
that the young group responded to the man.
I wouldn't mind getting punched to get these veterans out of here.
Bruce Reed, a Vietnam War vet and chairman of the Veteran Memorial Park Committee, says the young people have been gathering at the park for more than 2 weeks to play the game he doesn't understand. Fed up with what he believes is a show of disrespect, he, in his words, kind of snapped.
All right, get the camera, get the camera, get the camera. Get this guy in jail.
Reed says he was charged with disorderly conduct and destruction of property.
So maybe you guys will think this is serious or not.
No, we don't.
What do you mean, no, you don't, you little
Reed, who at first shook a young veteran's hand, later bumped into a pregnant woman. But in the end, if it stops the loitering in Veterans Park, Reed says his behavior was worth it.
Well, I don't regret it for a minute.
And with 500,000 views of this YouTube video, Winona's City Council is now poised to ban playing Pokemon Go at Veterans Park.
What I really wanted to do is just kind of make the community here in Winona aware of what's going on and how the park's being disrespected. Well, now it's all over the world. So I guess I got my message out.
You're very disrespectful, hey. Very. So are you.
And I reached out to 2 of the Pokemon Go players who were there videotaping the confrontation, but they weren't able to get back to me by 10 o'clock. At tomorrow night's Winona City Council meeting, they'll vote on an ordinance that would ban gaming, tents, and music, among several other things, at Veterans Memorial Park. A Winona City Council member tells me the city attorney will review the proposal first. Carla.
All right, thank you so much, Lou. Interesting story.
Well, happening right now, it is National Night Out, and it's getting underway in several communities. For the 5th year in a row, Minneapolis is hoping to have the best turnout in the entire country. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live near Falwell Park in North Minneapolis with more. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Julie. Yeah, things are just getting going here. We're at 33rd and Oliver in North Minneapolis. You can see people are starting to arrive. Hi, guys. How are you doing? Lots of activities out here for the kids. We have a bounce house going. They're just getting the food ready over here. And this is a big event, 12 years in the running here at the Spirit and Truth Worship Center. They do a lot of work putting this together. You can probably hear the music is already going behind us here. They expect between 300 and 350 people. As you mentioned, Minneapolis is the tops in the nation when it comes to participation on National Night Out. More than 1,500 permits citywide for block parties tonight. That's a record for Minneapolis, and as you mentioned, hoping to score the best for the 5th year in a row. Now, National Night Out means a lot of different things. It means neighbors coming together and getting to know each other, to watch out for each other and help reduce crime in neighborhoods. And it's also an opportunity for police to come and interact in a relaxed atmosphere with the communities that they serve. And it's been an especially tough year in many communities for police and community relations. In order to address that specifically, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is doing this. They're handing out these bracelets with 3 words on them. It says, trust, change, together. And it includes a little note that says, wear this wristband to show a partnership between neighbors and law enforcement. Let's work together to create trust and positive change in our communities. That's just one thing that Hennepin County is doing. Minneapolis police say that they're just hoping to keep an open dialogue tonight. So as they're barbecuing with the communities that they serve out here, they can have open communication about any issues that they have, create more trust, and create an open dialogue so that the first time that people have an interaction with police, it's not during a call where they need help. It's during something like this so that they can become neighbors all together. We're going to have more on that coming up at 6 o'clock as the people continue to arrive here in North Minneapolis for this block party for National Night Out. Julie?
Well, Lou, I just got to say, there's some beautiful faces over your right shoulder right now. Lots of smiles.
Yeah, lots of smiles. Beautiful kids here to have a good time.
Oh,
Hey,
they're
guys.
darling. Well, have fun. Thanks so much, Lou. We'll see you a little bit later tonight. Spotlight on community. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in North Minneapolis at what will likely be one big party. Hey, Lou.
Hey, Julie. Yeah, they're still showing up here at 33rd and Penn outside the Spirit and Truth Worship Center. They expect about 300 people here every year. They're getting the food ready right now. The kiddos are already having a good time. This year, National Night Out is also about police mending relationships. National Night Out is a chance for neighbors to get to know each other and, in a relaxed atmosphere, a chance for police to engage their community.
This summer it's more important than it's ever been.
Lynn Crockett has long been active in her North Minneapolis community and with National Night Out. Following the police shooting in Falcon Heights of Philando Castile, other similar shootings, and the murders of police officers nationwide as a response, she hopes nights like National Night Out can help police and communities build trust.
What we've been through in the country, what we've been through in our own state, we've got to do something to close this divide.
Together is one of the themes this year for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. At block parties tonight, they'll be handing out these bracelets as a gesture of unity.
I think it's, with everything that's going on in the community, I think it'll actually try to bring us together.
Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is perhaps most directly addressing the current strained climate between police and some communities. Minneapolis Police is defending 4 straight years of the most well-attended National Night Out in the nation. Assistant Chief Chris Arneson says tonight will, in part, be about open dialogue.
I think it's really important for us to get out, especially now, and to talk to as many people as we can. Like I said, we're very open to talking about whatever issues the community wants to talk about.
St. Paul Police say they're not doing anything different tonight, but say these types of events help.
I think the big part is that officers are getting out and meeting the people that they're working with within the community, the neighbors, the residents of the areas that they're working in.
As I mentioned, for 4 straight years now, Minneapolis has had the most well-attended National Night Out. And with 1,500 permits for block parties like this one, they're hoping this will make 5 years in a row. Julie?
All right, great. Thank you, Lou.
Other news tonight, a disturbing string of incidents happening in St. Paul's Hamlin Midway neighborhood. Residents say someone is poisoning pets in the area. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose spoke with a couple of people whose dogs have become victims.
He just kind of had it in the middle of the yard here.
In Kelsey Jurick's yard, where Little Jet plays, there's no easy way for a passerby to throw a treat to the pup.
Somebody had to intentionally walk into the yard.
Making a disturbing act last Friday, a brazen one. Someone apparently fed the little Italian greyhound poison.
So you can see he ate this whole half of it.
Those little blue pellets are rat poison, not just wadded into a piece of bread, but baked into a biscuit, making the brazen act a calculated one.
It's a sick human that follows through with something like this.
Kelsey is lucky she was paying attention.
I actually caught him eating it, so grabbed it from him.
She's lucky she's a vet student and knew how to act fast.
I took him immediately over to the U of M.
And her neighbors are lucky.
Inside of the bush over there.
That when Kelsey got home, she warned them.
Scared me after I heard hearing about hers, and then I see her with this.
Across the alley, the next day, Dan Pipcorn caught his rat terrier Lola chewing on an identical poison-laced biscuit.
So right now you kind of babysit her, huh?
Oh yeah.
When something like this happens, we want everybody to call the police.
Police say Kelsey and Dan are the only 2 St. Paul residents to file reports. But over social media, another 10 of their neighbors tell similar stories, in some cases, of their dogs dying.
Makes it much more likely that somebody just has a sick game going in their head.
Kelsey hopes whoever did it gets caught, and more importantly, that it doesn't happen to another dog.
Or, worse, children.
Now, if the person behind this is caught, they could face a charge of poisoning animals, which is a gross misdemeanor in Minnesota. If you notice signs in your pets, such as vomiting or stumbling, it's very important to get them to a vet because there are very specific treatments for poison. Randy?
Makes you sad somebody's out there doing that.
Yeah, unbelievable.
All right, thank you, Lou.
Hoping to cool off with a swim in North Minneapolis, we're disappointed to find the new Weber pool closed. Lou Ragoose looks into why.
Burgers, dogs.
George Green is perfectly happy manning the grill, but his kids were looking forward to something else at Weber Park.
Because I wanted to go somewhere.
They, like many other kids, were disappointed. For the 3rd straight day, Weber Pool was closed.
I hope it opens again.
This is the 2nd extended closure in the last month. Touted as the only pool of its kind in the U.S., Weber Pool has no chemicals and uses a natural filtration system with plants. According to the park board, recent storms have altered the bacteria levels in the water. According to a park board spokesperson, they weren't expecting the amount of storm runoff, water that just rushes right down these streets, then ends up inside Weber Pool.
Sometimes it could be a bummer because kids can't come swim when they want to swim.
George looks at the bright side. His family's still having fun. Kevin Sawyer isn't so kind.
Whether or not they love it when they're in there, they can't love it if it's not open.
Sawyer says he's seriously upset with what he sees as a big investment with big promises failing to pay off.
Because of bureaucracy and politics, I think this has become something that is not useful to the community. I think this has become useful to our political leaders who want to have a gold ribbon that they can hang around their neck.
Others are hopeful these are just growing pains.
I'm hoping they work out the kinks, yeah.
And the pool can see more consistent use in what's left of summer. Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Digging out of medical debt can be overwhelming, especially when you're hit with a bill you thought was covered by insurance. For months, our investigative team has been looking into outrageous medical bills.
Tonight, how you can fight back. Here's KARE 11's Lou Ragoose.
The number of phone calls,
I don't know what's going on.
You get calls when you're working, all the time.
On the other end of those phone calls at the Oftedal home, debt collectors.
And it weighs on you.
Says final notice.
Calling about thousands of dollars of surprise medical bills racked up over the last 2 years.
So the last 2 years have been very, very hard.
It all began when Brian Oftedal had shoulder surgery. He says he chose a doctor listed as in-network on his Humana insurance list. The most he thought he'd have to pay is $6,000, the insurance plan's in-network deductible. But when the bills started to arrive,
we were getting the first bill for the surgery alone was $18,000.
Shocked, his wife Jody called the insurance company.
That's when Jody got involved and started making calls saying, what's going on here? You know, we were under the impression everything was covered.
What Jody was told is although the doctor was in network, the anesthesiologist wasn't.
How are you supposed to know that?
Meaning those bills were applied to a much higher deductible under the Oftedal's health care plan.
When somebody's going to have surgery, you don't know that you have to. How would you call a hospital and know who the anesthesiologist is going to be?
And there were more surprises. Although the doctor was in network, the surgery center where she works and recommended for the surgery was not, something the Oftedals say they were never told.
We can only do so much. We're probably going to end up selling our house to get out from underneath the pressure.
Since we began investigating surprise medical bills, we've heard from dozens of families in similar situations, some of whom were wrongly billed for out-of-network costs.
Many cases in which the denial of coverage or failure to pay the payments are inappropriate, they're unfair.
Minnesota Commerce Commissioner Mike Rothman wants those people to know how they can get help. The Commerce Department has a phone number and email address where people with questionable medical bills can reach the Consumer Services Division. The department then can make a ruling or facilitate an external review of the bills.
It's often the best solution is to just pick up the phone, call the department, and we can get to the bottom of it.
The Oftedals are appealing their bills through the Commerce Department.
Well, this one is for $6,705.
But for now, they hope that by sharing their story, they can warn others to help avoid the mountain of surprise medical bills they got.
And if there's anything we could do to help people from getting in that situation, we want to do it.
And in an email, Humana told us they encourage members to verify by online or by phone that all the providers are in network before any surgery. Now, if you have a story about a medical insurance nightmare, we want to hear about it. We've set up a link on our website where you can find that information, also about filing the appeal through the State Commerce Department, and you can find that at KARE11.com.
That's really sad, but great information to have.
Yep.
Thank you, Lou.
Randy? Tonight, a chance for the community to come together to mourn the tragic loss of a 5-year-old girl named Elena Myrtle.
She was killed and kidnapped over the weekend, allegedly by a family friend who was charged today. And for the first time tonight, we are hearing from her family.
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose was at a vigil held tonight in Watkins. He joins us now live. Lou?
Guys, the candlelight vigil just wrapping up an extremely emotional evening here in Watkins. Hundreds of people gathered in this town of less than 1,000 on the day the murder suspect made his first appearance in court. Everyone here made sure that tonight was all about Elena.
Welcome to all who have joined here today.
A community coming together for a family in pain. One evening of peace in Watkins in the midst of what has been the week from
hell. Like a complete nightmare. It's like everybody's in shock and nobody really knows how to feel. They feel anger or feel sadness, or it's hard to really put it into words how any of us feel.
Lord is my light and my salvation.
Elena Erdel's godmother and aunt, Angie Adams, sums up not just what her family feels, but the whole town wonders.
We just want answers. That's basically, we just want to know why.
A town wondering what would possess anyone to hurt an innocent 5-year-old who is looking forward to starting kindergarten in a couple weeks. Little Elena is described by her big cousin as a girl who wanted to be in the middle of everything.
My uncle and my cousin Carter wanted to go hunting, that she always wanted to be involved.
You're just a bubbly little sweetheart.
That little sweetheart taken away, a town left with a void, and a family wondering if they'll ever know why.
I loved the little girl. Everybody just loved her. She was an absolute little sweetheart, just the sweetest, cutest little thing in the entire world, and we're absolutely devastated.
And again, it was just an extraordinary show of support by the community of Watkins. The Erdel family actually lives on the same street as the church. People were gathered here all day, and the family tells me that they got a lot of comfort out of the people being here. The funeral will take place here on Friday. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Lou.
We begin with new details about the man who allegedly kidnapped and killed a 5-year-old girl. We have learned that there is more to 25-year-old Zachary Anderson's criminal history than once thought. KARE 11's Lou Raguse has the story.
When the suspect was named in the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of 5-year-old Elena Erdel, his criminal record showed little more than traffic violations. But one woman knows there's more.
Now that everything has happened, I look back and it just makes everything so much more creepy.
This woman, who we agreed not to identify, lived next door in Monticello to Zach Anderson and his family in 2006. He was 16, she was 31. Court documents lay out how, shortly after she moved in, the woman started receiving notes on her car.
Say things like, you're super hot and, I would like to be your boyfriend. If you want a boyfriend, call this number. Well, I never called the number. I just didn't call the number.
Then, several occasions where moments after smoking in her garage, she would find her cigarettes stolen. But then came an alarming incident in December 2006 when, according to court documents, Anderson showed up in the middle of the night, drunk, in nothing but his boxers, pounding on her door.
And he's like, just let me in. And he was pushing his face in the door and trying to push the door open. And I'm like, no, you're not coming in, and you're going to go home right now. This is ridiculous. And he's like, just let me in, I'm going to F you. And I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, you know you want to F me. And I'm like, I just kind of laughed it off a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so.
But she could no longer laugh it off months later when her cell phone was stolen in the middle of the night as she and her young children slept. Anderson admitted stealing it to police and later pleaded guilty to burglary.
It made me just sick knowing that how close he was to me, how close he was to my kids.
And the woman tells me she was afraid of Anderson after that burglary and scared for her children to sleep next door to him. But his family was evicted after the charge. He was sentenced to community service for that. If convicted on the kidnapping and murder charges in this week's case, he'd face up to 40 years in prison. Julie?
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Today, Vikings fans got to walk through the doors of U.S. Bank Stadium to celebrate a day that was several years in the making. And with that, the Vikings finally took the field for the first time in their new home.
A preseason record-setting crowd was there to cheer on the team. After the game, fans shared with KARE 11's Lou Raguse what they thought about it.
As the purple poured out, of the Minnesota Vikings' newly minted home.
Vikings win!
with a preseason win.
Amazing. Unbelievable. Awesome. That's something special.
You can probably predict how most fans answer when you ask them how they liked the first game in US Bank Stadium.
It's beautiful. It was really cool.
Impressed by the glass-like roof.
Having the sun come through the glass on the top, and the clouds would come over and get shady, and then the clouds would go away and be sunny. It was really, you felt like you're outside.
When the sun came through and the natural lights, it was gorgeous.
And awed by the fan noise inside.
It really hurted my ears.
Once they'd given praise, some fans had constructive criticism.
I thought the app was going to run better.
The Vikings smartphone app, promising to show you everything from the quickest bathroom route to food ordered to your seat, didn't live up to its billing for Callie Rasmussen.
It kept crashing. It didn't seem to work perfectly.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi connection wasn't as good as what you'd expect.
The noon kickoff served as a preseason dry run for football Sundays this fall, so there's time to address issues.
There weren't a ton of tables to eat.
Yeah, there was by Revival, where the chicken place is, they had one table where you could bring your chicken over and eat, and everybody's wondering why aren't there more tables by there.
But not all issues are considered problems.
The men's bathroom line was longer than the women's bathroom line. I thought that was awesome.
As even those sharing complaints say, this is one major upgrade.
At least we didn't have the troughs. For the men's bathroom.
Every man who's been to a game knows exactly what he's talking about. The top complaint I heard from the fans was the long wait to get through security on the way in, but yet they didn't seem too upset about that either. Judging by how things went on the field, the players looked pretty comfortable in the new stadium as well, right, Dave?
Yeah, Lou, they did, and it's always
a job for some deputies over the weekend, the search for a snake, and a very large one, but they got the job done and captured it. Deputies in McLeod County hunted the creature after a call came in saying it was on the loose. KARE 11's Lou Regoose has the story.
Good morning, baby. Okay, there you are.
There's one problem that stands out when it comes to keeping a boa constrictor as a pet.
The problem with these is they just get too big.
Sarah Richard has seen it time and again over her 30 years with the Minnesota Herpetological Society, a local group of reptile and amphibian lovers.
They're not so cute when they get to be this big. And it's a problem to house them. It's a problem to just manhandle them.
Sarah's caring for this 10-foot-long, 45-pound female boa after it was found Saturday in a rural McLeod County park in the trees behind a swing set by two young boys.
It is one of the weirder things that have happened. So.
McLeod County Sheriff Scott Raymond has a theory on how the snake got there.
With a snake like that, what that typically means is that someone had a pet, got too large, something more that they could manage, and they released it somewhere here. And
Not everyone in the sheriff's office is a snake person.
The rookie who they said should do it, he didn't want to have anything to do with it.
But a deputy and sergeant took one for the team, removed it from the woods that night, and transported it to Sarah's house. She and the sheriff still hope the owner will come forward.
And we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Someone to take responsibility for it.
Lou Regoose, KARE 11 News.
And that does it for us here in Golden Valley. Let's get you back out to the State Fair with Randy and Julie.
All right. Thank you, Carla. Wow, that Lou Regoose, he really
he'll do everything.
He's a really big team player. We appreciate that so much.
Not me, that's for sure.
Well,
we begin with disturbing new details in the case of a Bemidji girl who was kidnapped in June.
She was taken from the home of a woman who was babysitting her, and new documents revealed that woman may have helped plan the entire thing.
KARE 11's Lou Regoose has the story and a warning: the content is disturbing.
The case began with a fire investigators believe to be arson. Inside, they found the body of Melissa Norby underneath a mattress with her arms bound. Missing was the 5-year-old Bemidji girl whom Norby was babysitting. The little girl's mom was one of Norby's best friends. The next morning, police found the girl alive and arrested Jacob Kinn, a sex offender who, according to search warrants, admits to having a relationship with Norby. The warrant filed this week reveals surprising details about Melissa Norby's role in the lead-up to the kidnapping. According to the warrant, detectives reviewed text messages between Norby and Jacob Kinn. The detective writes that the two of them had been, quote, apparently attempting to acquire the child for the purpose of sexually assaulting her. It says Norby and Kinn discussed possible kidnapping scenarios, such as Norby claiming to police she was assaulted by a stranger who snatched the girl. According to the warrant, Kinn told police in an interrogation that a year and a half earlier, he and Norby had sex while the same girl was present in the room. The warrant also says in the month leading up to the abduction, he searched the internet for how to get horse tranquilizers. pediatric sedation, and roofies. Kin has not been charged with arson, murder, or sexual assault, although the 11 search warrants filed so far clearly state police are looking into all 3 additional charges. And according to the search warrants, on the morning after the fire, one witness said Jacob Kin smelled majorly of gasoline. But again, kidnapping is so far the only charge he faces. And Randy and Julia spoke with the family tonight. They learned several weeks ago about this big revelation that the babysitter possibly helped plot the kidnapping, and they said that broke their hearts.
I can imagine.
Carla, the primary question has been answered, that being, where's Jacob? And now we're hoping that this week, many of the other lingering questions can be answered as well. When investigators named Danny Heinrich a person of interest in the disappearance of Jacob Wetterling nearly a year ago, many wondered exactly what that meant and where it would lead. We now know, at a minimum, that Heinrich knew where Jacob's body was buried. KARE 11 sources say Heinrich led investigators there last week to a farm just off a main road into Paynesville, the town where Heinrich lived in 1989. There, investigators dug up human remains, and we just confirmed today they also found clothing Jacob was wearing the night he disappeared. According to the Stearns County Sheriff's Office, dental records confirmed they found Jacob. Now the question is, what else did Heinrich tell investigators, and how did they get him to talk? Heinrich's trial on child pornography charges was set to begin in October. Legal experts speculate he was offered a plea deal, possibly even immunity in Jacob's case, in return for leading them to the body. According to court documents, investigators interviewed Heinrich at least 4 times in the months following Jacob's abduction. Shoe prints and tire tracks at the scene were consistent with Heinrich's. And the greatest link, a DNA match found last year that linked Danny Heinrich to the kidnapping and sexual assault of Jared Shirel 9 months before Jacob was kidnapped. Some investigators have believed since 1989 that the same man kidnapped both boys. Other questions we hope to answer this week. What connection, if any, Heinrich had to the farm where Jacob's body was found? And we also don't know how long Jacob lived after he was taken that night in October 1989. Carla.
A lot of difficult questions, no question. Lou, grateful, however, I think the whole community for at least one answer, the biggest answer of all. Thanks so much. There are new developments in the Jacob Wetterling case as people across the world continue to show support for his grieving family. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is here with what we are learning tonight. Lou?
Carla, we learned over the weekend Jacob Wetterling will not be coming home alive. And tonight, KARE 11 sources tell us the boy was buried with some of the same clothing he was wearing when he was kidnapped. Those who helped search for Jacob Wetterling back in 1989 were well aware that when the 11-year-old was kidnapped, he was wearing a red St. Cloud hockey jacket, red t-shirt, blue sweatpants, and white tennis shoes. Now, sources confirmed to KARE 11 some of that clothing was found, along with Jacob's remains, buried on a farm near Paynesville. That farm is located along a main road into Paynesville that one might drive from St. Joseph. KARE 11 sources say Danny Heinrich led investigators to that spot last week. Heinrich, jailed on child pornography charges, was named by investigators as a person of interest in the Wetterling abduction. Heinrich lived in Paynesville at that time. According to court documents, Heinrich's shoe prints and tire tracks were consistent with those found at the scene of the Wetterling kidnapping. Investigators interviewed Heinrich at least 4 times, but he always denied knowing anything about it. Some investigators have believed since 1989 that the man who took Jacob was the same person who, 9 months earlier, kidnapped and sexually assaulted 12-year-old Jared Shirel in Cold Spring. Last year, investigators matched the DNA found on Shirel's clothing to Heinrich. Now that Heinrich has shown authorities where to find Jacob's body, many questions remain. What brought the attacker to that quiet road in St. Joseph? Was it Heinrich? And if so, did he act alone? And how did investigators finally get Heinrich to talk? Legal experts believe there must have been a plea bargain offered to Heinrich, possibly even immunity in the Wetterling case. We hope to find out much more this week. Carla.
Jacob Wetterling's kidnapping from the very beginning carried that feeling of it could have been any one of our kids.
Over the years, as a direct result of this case and the advocacy of the Wetterlings, several laws changed in an effort to keep kids safe across the entire country.
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose takes a look at Jacob's legacy.
Minnesota's highest profile kidnapping case involved a boy who eventually felt like a part of all of our families.
It's our child, Jacob, but he's kind of a symbol. It's everybody's child.
Jacob Wetterling's parents first voiced that mantra in the days after his disappearance. In the years that followed, they lived it.
Patty somehow had the fortitude to just try to do everything she could to not only find Jacob, but to help other families that were dealing with this trauma.
Cordelia Anderson, who serves with Patty Wetterling at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, says the Wetterlings began that mission by spreading hope, then by taking action. In 1994, after the Wetterlings lobbied for it, President Clinton signed the Wetterling Act, requiring every state to keep a sex offender registry so law enforcement could better track the most dangerous offenders and share investigative information.
It was a very moving experience to be part of changing federal legislation and handing over a law enforcement tool that we think will be effective.
And as a former prosecutor, I can tell you that made a big difference. It made it easier for the police to track where people were.
Amber Alert has been issued. Then in 2002, Patty played a key role in the implementation of Amber Alerts in Minnesota to get key information out there in the first few hours following an abduction.
And just the idea that you've got to try to get to these cases right away. You've got to, as Patty will tell you, right in the first 48 hours are crucial.
Former KARE 11 reporter Alan Costantini got to know the Wetterlings as they quickly embraced the role of child advocates, then expanding that advocacy to the national stage.
Most of us, if anything had happened like that to us, we would have curled up in a ball.
The rest of Minnesota watched that transformation through news reports over the years, which is why the state is now grieving with them.
He was part of everybody's family. And finding out now that, that he did die is like literally a death in our families as well as the Wetterlings.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Well, many people, though, are asking, is this plea deal really enough punishment for Heinrich?
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with more on what authorities say went into this deal. Lou?
Yeah, Randy and Julie, prosecutors after the court hearing today described this as basically a deal with the devil. They much would have rather convicted Danny Heinrich of murdering Jacob Wetterling, but they couldn't prove murder unless they found Jacob. And they reached the conclusion that they wouldn't find Jacob unless Danny Heinrich would show them where he was. The prosecutors and investigators said that they charged Danny Heinrich last fall with child pornography in federal court because it gave them the most leverage. If it went to trial and he was found guilty on all counts, he'd go to prison for life. They made it clear to defense attorneys that with any plea deal, they would need to find out what happened to Jacob. They said Heinrich was so volatile that when they learned he'd be willing to make a deal, they knew they had to act fast. The Wetterlings agreed to the plea deal Monday, and they found Jacob later in the week. Heinrich got immunity on murder charges, but U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger stresses that he did not get away with murder.
Well, absolutely not. We worked this child pornography case hard to get us to the point where this man would take us to Jacob and confess for what he did. He's 53 years old. He will do 20 years in a federal prison, and after that, potentially more time under civil laws. He's not getting away with anything. We got the truth. The Wetterling family can bring him home, and it's time for all of us to have the closure and the peace that we're hoping can come next.
And what Luger is referring to there regarding the sentence is how in Minnesota, sex offenders can be civilly committed in a facility after the end of their criminal sentence, potentially indefinitely. And Heinrich will serve just over 17 years of that 20-year sentence. That means he'll be 70 years old when he's released from prison. Stearns County attorney sounded pretty confident up there that rather than being released into the public, he'll be sent to that sex offender facility. Randy and Julie.
All right, thank you, Lou.
Federal prosecutors in that same press conference revealed more of how they secured Heinrich's confession.
They described a volatile man who would be willing to speak one moment, then clam up the next. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with more on that. Lou?
Randy and Julie, it was a deal they never would have made without the Wetterlings' full support, and a deal they still hope puts Heinrich away for the rest of his life.
Finally, we know.
It was the question haunting Minnesotans for nearly 3 decades. Where's Jacob? We learned the answer on Saturday, and now we know what happened.
Danny Heinrich is no longer a person of interest. He is the confessed murderer of Jacob Wetterling.
In order to get Danny Heinrich to confess in detail in open court how he kidnapped and killed Jacob Wetterling, investigators and prosecutors had to bet last fall that their strategy would pay off. They charged him with several counts of child pornography in federal court after a search of Heinrich's home didn't turn up evidence that he killed Jacob. They were betting that the large potential prison sentence he faced would leverage him into bringing them to Jacob. For that bet to pay off, it meant giving Heinrich immunity on murder charges.
After almost 27 years, Danny Heinrich was willing to talk, and we had to grab the moment.
Knowing Heinrich was volatile and could change his mind at any time, the Wetterlings gave investigators their full blessing to make this deal. And Wednesday, after Heinrich led them to the burial site, they found the red jacket that those who searched for Jacob all those years ago knew he was wearing.
Each of us working on this case stopped in our tracks. And I will never forget that moment last Wednesday afternoon.
On Friday, they found Jacob.
This is not the ending that any of us wanted, but Jacob's finally home.
Home to what has become over the years Minnesota's family.
We've gotten to know each other over these last months.
Minnesota's mother.
I want to say, Jacob, I'm so sorry.
She's my hero.
And Danny Heinrich will be sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. He'll have to serve 17 years. And when he's released, prosecutors are hopeful that he will be civilly committed as a dangerous sex offender for the rest of his life. Now, we asked if there are any victims that came after Jacob, and the U.S. Attorney Andy Luger said he's not aware of any. But Heinrich did admit to abusing one boy before Jacob. Dylan Wollenhaus is here now with more on that.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. We finally have answers to nearly 3 decades of questions surrounding the disappearance of Jacob Wetterling. Answers that will eventually help the family heal, but also take away the hope that the Wetterlings have long held on to.
In federal court in Minneapolis today, Danny Heinrich admitted to kidnapping, sexually assaulting, and murdering Jacob. For that, he faces no charges. That decision was part of a plea deal that Patty and Jerry Wetterling both signed off on. They always wanted to bring Jacob home, and this was the way to do that. Heinrich's confession took just 15 minutes, but it contained horrific details about what he did to Jacob.
It also included what Jacob said to Heinrich. At one point, Jacob asked him, "What did I do wrong?" KARE 11's Lou Ragoose takes us through the heartbreaking confession.
15 minutes of details that those in a federal courtroom Tuesday afternoon will likely never forget. Danny Heinrich admitted he'd never seen Jacob Wetterling before April 22nd, 1989. But he was on their dead-end road that night as Jacob and his friends biked down to the store to rent a movie. Heinrich turned his car around and waited for them. The details of the abduction were just as the boys told them all these years. Jacob's brother Trevor and best friend Aaron Larson, whom Heinrich set free that night, were in court to hear what Heinrich did next. Heinrich said he then handcuffed Jacob and listened to police communication on a scanner in his car as he headed out of St. Joseph. The 11-year-old, as if thinking Heinrich might be a cop, asked him, "What did I do wrong?" Near a gravel pit outside Paynesville that night, Heinrich says he molested Jacob. He then let him get dressed when Jacob said he was cold. Jacob's mother, Patty, was strong throughout most of Heinrich's story. Some of the Wetterlings sobbed as Heinrich went through the awful details that came next. Jacob asked if he could go home, and Heinrich told him, no, they're too far away. A police car went by on the closest road, spooking Heinrich. He says he panicked, made Jacob turn around, and shot him twice in the back of the head. Heinrich left Jacob lying there and went home, then came back an hour later to bury him. Heinrich never made eye contact with the Wetterlings as he finished the story, saying a year later he returned to the burial spot and saw that Jacob's body had come to the surface. So he moved it to another spot and buried him again. That became Jacob's grave for the next 26 years. Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Not a new insight from a man once leading the Jacob Wetterling investigation, a man who was the first deputy on the scene back in 1989. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with the interview just wrapping up this afternoon. Lou?
Yeah, Randy, when they made Danny Heinrich's name public last year, Chief Deputy Bruce Bechtold was hoping for that tip, that bit of evidence that would connect Danny Heinrich and Jacob Wetterling so that they could find Jacob without Heinrich's help and some evidence they could use to charge him with murder. But he says that tip never came, and he now believes Heinrich kept this horrible crime a secret for all these years.
911 emergency.
As the first deputy to respond on October 22nd, 1989,
We believe that they have one of the boys.
the Jacob Wetterling case has come full circle for Stearns County Chief Deputy Bruce Bechtold, who was named lead Wetterling investigator earlier this year.
It's pretty surreal.
He, like everyone else, is disturbed by what Danny Heinrich has admitted to doing to the 11-year-old boy.
That's the boogeyman
the monster that your parents warned you about growing up.
And he understands how now having answers doesn't make many people feel better.
I think people relate it to their own children or their own childhood and think how horrific it would be for Jacob.
But he agrees that striking a deal with Heinrich to bring Jacob home was the best possible outcome. He was there when they found Jacob.
And while we're doing the initial small digs, one of the BCA lab people saw a red piece of fabric sticking out of the ground. And upon further excavation, we discovered that that was the main body of the red hockey jacket that Jacob had been wearing.
A surreal moment, Bechtold says, as they searched meticulously by hand. 2 days later, they found Jacob. And now the biggest case his department ever worked is over. 27 years after it began, he reflects with modesty.
I would think that everybody around here would say it's not about us.
And I asked Bechtold if any questions remain for him, and he said no. He believes Heinrich was telling the truth as he recounted that awful story yesterday. Now, as for the farm where they found Jacob's remains, Bechtold said he doesn't think it's ever been searched before. He said they had no reason to. Also today, just in the last hour, Patty Wetterling reached out with a tweet aimed at everyone who's been thinking of them and praying for them over the last several days. She said, "Thank you for carrying us at this difficult time. Jacob touched a lot of lives, and the hope continues." Julie, Randy?
All right. She's amazing. Thank you, Lou.
Good evening. 23 years ago, a 17-year-old St. Paul girl disappeared.
Hang Lee told her family she was going to a job interview and was never seen again. Now her family is hoping to finally get some answers after the man authorities believe was the last person to see her alive has been charged yet again with another serious but unrelated crime. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is following the developing story. Lou?
Julie, Randy, even though the new disturbing charge is unrelated, the court papers for this case directly address the disappearance of Hang Lee, and sources close to the investigation tell me they're hoping they might have leverage to lead them to the girl.
It's not right that she's not found.
Hang Lee's former boss talked to her the day in 1993 she disappeared.
She called me and said, "I'm not coming in. I'm going to a job interview," and I said, "It's okay, you know."
When Hang never came home, police assumed she ran away, until 5 months later, when they learned the man supposedly interviewing her for a job was a twice convicted sex offender.
There were very vicious rapes.
Over the years, Hang Lee's mother and other family members agonized over not knowing what happened.
That's my sister. She's was like my best friend, but it's more finding closure for my mom and dad.
I don't think that there's any hope, which is hard.
Hope of finding her alive may have faded, but there's now new hope for answers. After Mark Stephen Wallace, the man police say was the last to see her alive, was arrested last month, charged with kidnapping and holding a woman against her will in a Woodbury motel. The court paperwork in this kidnapping case references Hang Lee several times, saying Wallace is the sole suspect in the cold case disappearance of Hang Lee in 1993. This latest victim described fits of rage where Wallace would threaten to kill her, stating, "I've done it before, I will do it again." This victim asked Wallace about the murder, and Wallace stated, "She entered my business and never came out." Leads in the past have fizzled. A promising search of Wallace's home in 2009 ended up finding nothing.
Very strange, yeah.
But with the threat of a long prison sentence for the newest charges hanging over Wallace's head, investigators are hoping finally they'll get some answers.
She would be in her 40s now, and she could be having a nice life, and, you know, she doesn't get that now.
Now, Wallace has never been charged in the disappearance of Hang Lee. Hang's family was paying close attention to the developments in the Jacob Wetterling case last week, and they hope a similar deal is possible to help them bring their loved one home. They weren't ready to do an interview today, though, guys.
Well, wouldn't that be amazing if it happened again? Thank you, Lou.
Well,